Hey you guys, what's up and welcome back to my channel. So we are talking all about relationships today. It's actually Mark and mine. It's our 3-year anniversary today. And let me just say before I get started, I am not using my mic today because I'm trying to film this really fast before I go out and do other things because it is our anniversary clearly. So if you hear a little teeter-tattering in the background, that is Bolt walking around and making his presence known per usual. But if you've been following me for a while, you know that I have been through not a lot of different types of relationships, but I have had my fair share of monogamous relationships. I have had a 7-year high school, college, post-college relationship, and then I also had another 1-year relationship after that, and then now I have been with Mark for the past 3 years. So I have been getting a lot of messages lately, and I think it's obviously because I'm posting about him a lot, posting about the baby a lot, and being engaged and all that kind of stuff. I've been getting a lot of questions about how to move on from relationships, or when do you know when it's time to move on, and how do you then manifest a loving, healthy relationship after being in so many toxic relationships and things like that. And relationships for me have always been a very big part of my life. I was definitely one of those girls that was obsessed with having boys around or wanted a boyfriend from a very young age. I've just always been that way. I remember having my first crush in kindergarten and then constantly always wanting, or just having crushes and all that kind of stuff. So I've always been a relationship person, always wanted that person in my life. And, for various reasons, I had different views of love, right? And I think I reached back to my childhood and pointing out kind of my fascination with love from a very young age, because I think that's where a lot of that starts for us. We all watched Disney movies and wanted to be the princess who finds their prince and blah, blah, blah. And a lot of society teaches us girls to idealize this idea of finding Mr. Right or Mrs. Right or whichever, and finding the love of your life. And there's so much pressure to have that person. And I remember when I was in high school and through college, I always thought that by 26 I was going to be married and about to have kids and all this stuff. I'm 28 and just now kind of starting that. I'm not too far off of what I thought, but definitely not with the person that I thought I was going to be with and all that. So to give you guys kind of a breakdown of what I kind of learned. So going through having a high school sweetheart who I was always kind of a popular person in my community and stuff like that, and in college and things like that. So also were the people that I was with. So my ex, the 7-year relationship, he was a football player and went and played college ball, and then went into the NFL. And so I lived that life in a way, because we didn't go to the same college or the same high school, but our high schools were 5 minutes apart. So we lived in the same area in high school, but we never went to school together. And so we always had this element of separation, which allowed me, now looking back, to have a level of fascination with the idea of our relationship and the idea of him, the idea of myself in that relationship that wasn't always necessarily accurate of what was actually happening in reality. So I spent a lot of time missing him, thinking about him, thinking about what we were going to do. And then it was a very passionate situation as well, because we're 16, 17 to 21, 22 of, our first love in all those experiences. So I went through all that. And that was the biggest heartbreak of my life to date, was just having gone through all that, having my first love break my heart and tell me that basically he wasn't in love with me anymore. And at the time, I was actually living in another state with him, and I had to pick up what I had. I had nothing, and I'll link the video that I kind of touched on this a few years ago here for you guys. And a lot of you reference this video still to this day, which is nuts to me. But this was a time where I think I had just started dating Mark when I did that video. maybe a few months before I did that video. I don't even know. I can't remember. It's been that long. But yeah, so I kind of touch on like what was going through my mind at that time frame. But in a nutshell, I was out of college by that point. I was broke as hell. I, was supposed to go to grad school, didn't go to grad school because financial aid fell through. Went and lived with him. That completely crumbled. And I came back and was sleeping on my sister's couch in Texas and was just kind of trying to figure out what the hell I was going to do with my life, on top of having like this heartbreak. And so it was a solid like 2 years and this 2 years encompassed me talking to other people, being in another relationship, like still feeling the heartbreak of 2 or 3 years actually, still feeling the heartbreak of this like 7-year relationship. And I remember back then I had a lot of dark days because that heartbreak was just earth-shattering in the sense of I had all these fascinations with love, right? Growing up, I had these ideas and things that I thought about that relationship while I was with that person, because again, the little elements of separation, we were 5 minutes apart in 2 different high schools. Then we went to 3 hours apart in different colleges. We had a lot of separation, so we could have that kind of relationship that you could pick up and put down whenever you kind of wanted to in a way. It wasn't like we were up under each other every day, kind of learning about the real version of each other, and we didn't even know who the hell we were as individuals at that time. So, but that heartbreak forced me to decide who I wanted to be, because coupled with getting out of college and not having a job, not really knowing exactly what I was going to do, and also being in like this really weird, like come down off of a college high. Like I think, and I've mentioned this before, I feel like people do not talk about enough when you are in college, you're killing it, you're on campus, you're doing your thing, you may be a leader, a student leader, doing things. When you come out of that environment and you are nobody again, it is a lot. And so I definitely was suffering the heartbreak of that relationship, on top of the reality check that like I was no longer in college anymore and I wasn't like the shit anymore, in a sense, you know what I mean, in my own brain. So it was a killer ego season for me. Like my ego was killed in so many ways, and it was hard, but it forced me to, like I said, choose who I wanted to be and start to manifest what I wanted versus what was happening to me at that time. I didn't have a lot of people necessarily giving me all these great examples of like what relationships look like that I wanted. I did have a support system in like my sorority sisters and friends and family who were just there for me in a sense of support on a general basis. And just like talking about like our relationship issues / things that we had gone through, but also like imagining what we wanted in the future. And one thing that I realized when I was in that moment in my life was that I had never really asked myself, what did I want out of a relationship? Not what I had envisioned, not what I had been told was like the great way to be in a relationship, what you should be in a relationship. I literally asked myself, when you take away all of the expectation from other people, from outside sources, what do you, Jade, really see yourself being in a relationship, and what do you see that person being to you? And so I started asking myself that question. And one day I was at work, and my manager at the time I was talking to her about, being heartbroken and all of this stuff. And she was like, you should write a list of the things that, you want out of a man, and make it as simple and as large in general as you want it to be. But just allow yourself the experience to actually think through what you want. And so I wrote this list in my journal, and it was like 2 or 3 pages long, right? This is like 2014 that I wrote this. And at that same time, I also was reconnecting with my spirit and getting back into doing, really not even getting back into, I never really was a Bible study person. I never was a prayer call person. But at the time, a few of my sorority sisters and I were kind of all searching for that same thing. So we were leaning on each other a lot, and we would do like prayer calls first thing in the morning before we all got our day started, and we would just like chat about random stuff, and then also pray over each other about whatever we were going through. So that was really fulfilling for me. And then also we would do like Bible studies on a weekly basis, And at that time, I wasn't really solidified in my faith in that way. I had been definitely around it more when I was in college, because Delta Sigma Theta is a Christian sorority. So I was around other, Christian women a lot more than in my past, because my parents are not super religious, and I was never forced to go to church like that. I did when I was a kid, but you grow up and you kind of like get caught up in whatever. So I definitely had moments in my life where I was not like praying. I was not, considering God and the decisions that I was making or anything. So this time period, when I was at the lowest of my low of my life, still to this day, I was doing those prayer calls. I was getting into the Word and like having these Bible studies. And the crazy thing is, I'm gonna tell you all this short story while we're here in this time frame. So one day we had decided, we usually did Bible study at one of our houses, right? We used to cook and kind of like go into whatever we were studying that day. But one day we decided, out of all the days, one day we decided to go to a park, a pretty popular park in Dallas, to have Bible study outside, because it was a gorgeous day out, and we wanted to be kind of in the mix of just like switch it up. And there was this Nike event happening at the park, and I remember like I was single at the time, and I remember seeing like this guy, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't know, like he just looks like, it was like I felt energy, and I couldn't even see his face, y'all. I couldn't see his face. I just remember his stature, and I remember like the way he was dressed, and I remember seeing that like he was a leader like in whatever they were doing, because it was like this intramural football thing that they were doing for like OU in Texas. In Texas there's like this big OU-UT game that happens, and it's like the fair, it's Texas Fair is involved. It's like it's a big thing. So they were doing like an intramural game. Nike was sponsoring it at this park. And so we were out there. I remember recognizing it, and I don't know why I still even remember the story. So, okay, that's 2014. We have our Bible study. It starts raining that night, and we ended up leaving, okay? I end up talking to other people. I test the waters. I kind of date other guys that maybe I wouldn't have given a chance in the past, or I was literally just like testing the waters. And that's the other thing I feel like helped me in this time frame, was I was working on myself, but I was also trying to experience different things, because prior to this time period in my life, I thought I had one type. I was like, he has to be this way, he has to be like this, da 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 da. And I allowed myself to experience different types of people in this time frame, so that I could actually know for sure what I liked and what I didn't like. And that's the beauty of singleness, is that you can explore who you are as an individual, and at the same time experience yourself through other people. So I would experience these guys and find out things about myself that I was like, dang, is having a kid is having a child a deal breaker for me? Prior to this season of my life, I thought I would never date somebody with a child. But I started dating one of my exes who had a child, and that was the first experience I ever had, and it actually was a positive experience. So it was like stuff like that would happen, where I'd be like, would I ever date somebody that's older than me? Well, let me see. Let me give this guy a chance. Let's like go on a few dates. And so I started to experience things so I could know for myself what I wanted, and not just like what other people told me was like the best out there. You know what I mean? I feel like we're so quick to tell people like, "Ooh, girl, this is what you want." No, you don't know what I want. Let me be the judge of that. And so singleness that season gave me the opportunity to start seeing and experiencing what I wanted. And so I date a few guys. I end up getting into another relationship with someone that, again, in my mind at the time, I thought was what I wanted. And I say that with air quotes, because he was definitely someone that people thought I should be with, if that makes sense. Like on paper, he was like a good match. And for a while, it was a good match. We had fun together. We did a lot of, we just like we did a lot of things together that we enjoyed. Like I would never say that I regret any relationship that I've ever had, situationship, anything, because everything happens for a reason, right? And I learned a lot about myself through that relationship. And so one of the things that I learned was that the way that he was when it came to like religion and different belief systems, we didn't share. And that's one of those things where it's like, okay, just because you believe in God and I believe in God doesn't mean that we believe and see the world in the same way. So it's like, that's why you have to ask, like, and have those real conversations with your partner about how do you see yourself, how do you see each other as a couple on a spiritual level, and like what you want to see in your future. And then also pay attention to the things that are like kind of like lifestyle questions. Like one of the biggest things that I was able to recognize and helped me move on from that relationship after we had broken up, or decided to break up rather, was that we didn't celebrate life the same. One of those things was like, I love to travel. I'm a, if it's your birthday, we are doing it big on your birthday. We are celebrating. We're having a party. We're, whatever. I'm a celebrator. Like in my family, like we do that. I come from a big family, and he wasn't like that. So there would be moments where, I would be expecting celebratory grandness because that's how I celebrate and that's how I live life. And he didn't in the same way. So I would find myself getting disappointed about things that I would be like, well, why would I expect someone who doesn't celebrate life the same way as I do to do anything other than celebrate life the way that they do? And so it was like, I started realizing that we sometimes put like unrealistic expectations on people without realizing that we're putting them on them. And then we get disappointed because we're like, well, why didn't you know to do things the way that I want them done? And it's like, again, sometimes you can talk about certain things, and other times you have to actually experience them. You have to experience what disappointment in a relationship feels like. You have to experience what it means to disappoint someone else. It's not always the other person. Was I perfect in those relationships? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because again, if I am not true to myself about who I am first and what I bring to the table, then I am going to disappoint those people that I'm with, because I may be, playing it the same way they're playing it in the beginning. Everybody trying to make everybody happy. So you're going to do things that you ain't going to do forever in the beginning because you're trying to make that person like you. You're trying to impress them. What I realized when I was at the point when I was about to, I was moving on from my last boyfriend for a year and into the relationship with Mark, was I was at a point where I was like, you know what? I'm not going to sit here and predict what we're going to be. I'm not going to sit here and try to pretend like I'm something that I'm not. Been there, done that. I'm not going to try to impress you. I literally told him these things from jump. I was like, I'm not here to what you see is what you're going to get. Am I going to cook dinner every night? Absolutely not. That's not in my nature. I'm not that person. But will I take you across the world and show you something that you've never seen before? Absolutely, because that's the kind of person that I am. I had to know those things about me before I could really connect and get with someone like Mark, because he was able, the right person at the right time, understood me and didn't expect me to be anything other than myself, but I had to be able to articulate and show him who I was. So that's the part of being an individual and understanding who you are that is so crucial to being in a happy relationship. It's like, if you can't even make yourself happy, if you can't be real and honest with yourself to a point where you don't need to be in a relationship to be happy, you're not expecting other people to cater to your happiness, then you're not ready to be in that happy, healthy relationship, because a happy, healthy relationship requires you to be vulnerable and transparent and honest about the things that you love about yourself and that are real about you, and also the things that you're not so proud about. And I feel like a lot of times we get into relationships with people wanting to just praise all the good things about ourselves and also about the other person. You have to also be able to recognize, hey, if I can be real with myself, then I have to be real with you. And if you're not prepared to be real with yourself, then we can't cohabitate, because if I'm the only one being real and transparent here about who I really am, then how are we supposed to connect? It doesn't work. And then you have issues. And then you have misunderstanding, miscommunication. It's a lot of all that stuff stems from me not understanding who I am and you not understanding who you are, or vice versa, or whatever, and they're just being crossed paths and stuff that just gets all messy, and then you have issues, right? And so when I first started talking to Mark, I was like, I just got out of a relationship. I am not looking for anything. I actually want to be single right now. Whatever. And I literally was afraid of what I felt coming from him, because day one that we met, he like attracted me. His energy attracted me, and it scared the shit out of me. Okay, I was like, oh no, I'm not ready to go down another path with another person. Like, I'm done. I don't want to. It's too much vulnerability. It's too much. You gotta like emotion. And I'm a Capricorn, so I have moments where like I just don't like a lot of emotion, because it overwhelms me. And he overwhelmed me because I think my spirit before my mind recognized what he was gonna be for me. And so in the beginning, I pushed him away. I was like, nah, I don't want to see you today. I don't want to like talk. And he was just right there. Like, it was even a moment where it was Mother's Day, and he knew that my stepmom, I was going to my dad's house, and I was going to see my stepmom that day. And he wanted to bring over some flowers, or he wanted to be around me. And I was just like, honestly, I'm like overwhelmed by you, so I don't want to see you today. And he was like, okay, no worries. And literally like a few hours later, I had one of my friends over at my apartment before I left, and I hear a knock at the door, and I'm like, who the hell is at my door? And so I went to the door, and it was literally a card and a bouquet of flowers, and he had gotten my stepmom a card, and he'd only met her one time by this point, and some flowers, not for me, not for him, but for her. And I came back inside, and I was like freaked out, because I was like, what is this man trying to do? Like, I don't understand this. Like, I don't like this. I don't like this. And my friend was like, girl, are you insane? Like, that's what good men do. They don't get scared of you pushing them away. They understand that you are going to need time to get acclimated to something that's good. Because most women, most of us don't get that. We're not used to having someone actually be nice to us and genuine and think of us in a way that makes us feel good, and that's actually like a good thing. Like, so many of us, because we are all broken, men and women, we're all broken, and we're all like trying to figure things out. And so when you come into contact with somebody who, regardless of all that, still thinks of you in a way that's different, you just don't know how to respond. So I was like, okay, because I literally was about to cut him off at that point, because I was like, you're doing too much, and I don't like it. So I literally almost cut him off, but she was the one who was like, don't do that. Like, think about this. So back to my story about Bible study outside at the park. He was the guy that I saw. We talked about this maybe 2 or 3 weeks into us talking. And he told me he's working for Nike. That's how we met, because he was like doing some stuff in Dallas with Nike, and we kind of got connected through like a work thing. So he was telling me about something, the flag football game had come up. And I was like, was that in 2014? And he was like, yeah, I was one of the coaches like on the field, like helping the teams. And I was like, the way you dress now, is this how you like dressed back then? Like, I feel like I see what you're wearing in a way. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, I saw you. Like, I feel like my spirit saw you and was like drawn to you in this like weird way, because I don't know if y'all ever had experienced that before, but you're just like drawn to somebody, and sometimes you actually like get in contact with them, and you like talk, and it ends up being like a friendship or a relationship or whatever, but we never actually spoke or anything. Like, I couldn't even, like I said, I couldn't remember his face. I just remember his stature. I remember what he was wearing. I remember like him being in the mix and stuff. And he was like, that's so wild, like that you saw me and we didn't even know each other or anything. And mind you, at the same time, we had literally lived 10 minutes away from each other for the 2 years. And so back to when in 2014, when I made that list that my manager had told me, like, write down everything that you want out of a person, just whatever. In 2016, when I first met Mark and we had that conversation, I was like, oh wow, I remember that list. Literally hadn't looked at the list since I wrote it in 2014, y'all. Swear. I went back, opened up the book, and literally every single thing I wrote in that book, it was 2.5 pages long. Every single thing, down to the fact that he can cook, down to the fact that he can sing, down to his skin color, down to like his want to learn about the world. Like, it was so many things. Every single thing on that list was Mark. And I had, with all the other guys I had tested out and kind of dated or whatever, I had never even thought about that list. Not one time to like compare, like, ooh, is this the guy? I never once thought about that. But when I met Mark and we talked about that story, and I was like, okay, let me go look at this list. I showed him that list. He was like, wow, like, this is crazy. So, needless to say, when you talk about moving on from heartbreak, from singleness, from toxic relationships, from unhappiness, and manifesting what you want, it's not always about being able to have that direct link when you're manifesting it. Like, sometimes it's going to take 2 years of living 10 minutes away from the love of your life before you get to that point, because timing is everything. You know, for whatever reason, God wasn't ready for us to meet in 2014 or any time before then. You know what I'm saying? But like in 2016, I just so happened to be in a mental place that I wasn't in 2014. He was in a mental place, a spiritual place that he wasn't in 2014. And now here we are 3 years later, engaged, having a baby, like celebrating life together. And I literally experience love every day in a new way with him, through the ups, through the downs. You know, one thing that people say about relationships is that they mirror who you really are. And I have seen so much of myself that I do not like in my relationship so many times. And same for him. But what we do is we love each other through the imperfections and the just craziness of what we've been through prior to one another. You know, like, we all carry this baggage from, you know, family things to relationship things, through just like personal things, whatever, that you're bringing into a relationship. And if you're not real about what you've gone through and how you cope with things and how you're carrying whatever you're carrying, there's no way that you're going to be able to be in that happy, healthy relationship. So what I really challenge you to do is, if you are looking for that perfect person, stop looking for that perfect person. Literally just stop. Trying to find somebody to complete you, stop. Because it ain't about that. Your life journey is about you remember to your spiritual self, to who you really are. The world confuses us. The world and society will have us thinking that we're somebody that we're really not. And when you start going through scenarios where your ego is being torn down, don't feel like it's because you're a bad person or because you did something wrong. If you're in a situation where your ego is being torn apart, take it as a blessing, because that means God is making room for you to be who you truly are. He is shedding off all that dead weight. Whether it's people in your life that are dead weight that you need to let go of, you know, circumstances, occupations, whatever. He's going to shake you up in order to allow things to come into your life that are going to be good for you. Everything works in your benefit, especially if you're aware of it and you put positive energy out into the world. You put love out into the world. And that's the biggest lesson that I learned in 2014 when I was at the lowest of my low. I was like, at this point, I ain't got nothing to do but like try to put out what I want back to me. I didn't realize that what I was doing was like law of attraction, was God doing what he does. Like, I didn't know like the terminology, but that's literally what I was doing. At that time, I was putting out the energy that I wanted back. I was showing God that I was trusting him more than I trusted myself, because I literally was like, what else am I going to do? Like, what options do I have? Am I going to just try to keep figuring life out by myself because that's all I know? No, I legitimately believe that I had a bigger plan for my life. Like, there was bigger for me. There was more for me. I wasn't satisfied with the status quo. I wasn't satisfied with being an average person because I never was meant to be. I was never meant to be normal. And that's a hard pill to swallow as someone who's growing up in America or whatever. You're trying to fit in, you're trying to figure out who you are, and like, it's easier to just say, oh, I'm like her, oh, I'm like him, oh, I'm like, no. The harder thing to do is to say, who am I without all that? Who am I? What do I like? What am I about? What do I truly enjoy? What do I actually care about? And once you start digging into those things, you start attracting more things that are like you and that resonate with you. And I think that when I was stripped away of all of my titles and all of my accolades and all those things at that time, it was the perfect scenario for me to rebuild and reimagine and manifest who I am today. So that is my 2 cents. More like a whole bunch of cents, because I don't even know how long this video is going to be at this point. But I hope this video helped you all, and especially those who are really kind of looking for this type of content or like just information or insight, to be honest, because I feel like I'm not really talking about nothing that is not already out there, like in the atmosphere and like from different outlets and places. But like, I legitimately believe in manifesting the life that you want, you know, and manifesting like the type of love that you want, and all of that starts with you and you deciding what you want yourself to look like from the inside and out. You know, what do you want people to feel when you walk into a room? How do you want to feel when you look in the mirror, first and foremost? And that discomfort, if there is discomfort when you look in the mirror, that's where you got to start digging. That's how you know, okay, I got to start doing something. And that's with reading books that you may not have read before. That's with having conversations that you may not have had before. That's with doing things you may not have done before. You have to do things differently if you want different outcomes. And so I charge you all to do that. Let me know your stories down below if you've been through something similar. If you want to go deeper into like specific relationship things, me and Mark would be happy to talk more about kind of things that we do in our relationship to kind of like keep us going. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Comment, like, do all that kind of stuff, subscribe. And until my next video, I will see you guys later. Bye.